Joe Hayes.
Let the question be now put.
Damien O'Connor.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Mr Chairman, I'm speaking on the commencement clause of the bill. Many people have lost their lives to produce this piece of legislation. 29 of them at Pike River and hundreds of others, because by any first world standard we have had inadequate health and safety provisions. If I go back to 1992, Mr Chairman, and I referred to that, can I quote here what the member said, that the proposed requirements for safety and health committees and representatives would have been totally confused. The accountability structures would most certainly have been confused if some of those amendments had been accepted by the committee. The member goes on, the national government took out these parts because it happens to believe that workplaces and workplace environment is best managed by the employers, having #1 responsibilities, what legislation clearly establishes. That failed. That failed the mining industry and it failed workers in New Zealand, Mr Chairman. The National Party has once again failed to produce proper health and safety legislation. How can we support the commencement of a bill, Mr Speaker? It's called a reform bill. And one of the previous speakers said there, I went to Google to quote, reform, to make changes in order to improve it. How can we claim that we're making improvements when alpaca farming, bird breeding, pet breeding, rabbit farming, worm farming are considered high risk, and sheep and cattle farming, dairy farming, tree pruning, thinning in a forest, explosives laying is considered low risk? It is bizarre and ridiculous. We are speaking on the commencement of a bill that will not necessarily take us forward in terms of health and safety across this country. I can't say it's a joke, Mr Speaker, Mr Chairman, because that would be dishonouring the hundreds of people who have lost their lives in failed health and safety, to bring us to this point here in the House where we hoped, and the Labor Party supported the legislation to select committee, we hoped we were making real progress. It really was a reform bill. That's what we hoped. Now we believe it's failed. I'm not sure whether the commencement date of 2018 is right or wrong, other than to say it's a long way down the track from 1992, when the National Party brought in health and safety and all its principles, and a long way down the track from 97 and other amendments that have taken place. Mr Chairman, I feel very compelled to do everything I can to get it right. It was not long before the Pike River disaster that I tried to raise the issues myself with the Minister of the Government. But assurances were given of proper process, of proper oversight, to no avail. We have in opposition the absolute responsibility to point out every fault in this piece of legislation, to remind the government that they failed in 92, the same ridiculous, pathetic excuses about workplace representation. What an arrogant approach to say that employees don't know what's safe and what's unsafe, that have no wisdom in the workplace. Mr Chairman, I say to you, I've learnt as an employer, not to this House, I've learnt as an employer to listen to the people at the coalface, to listen to the people who are doing the dangerous work and ask them and get guidance from them as to how to improve. But no, the vast majority of workers working in small and medium enterprises up and down this country will not be covered by the majority of provisions in this legislation, because they're under 20 employees, in spite of the percentages I hear from the Minister and the Government. I don't know what the true figures are. I don't believe many of the figures coming from the Government. Mr Chairman, can I say in the commencement of the clause that I'm referring to here, I have concerns that if we support this in the way that the legislation is going to be put in place, we are not indeed conducting reform, Mr. Chair.
Jan Logie.
Mr. Chair,